community, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim. Today, I've come on today. My name's Efaz Ahmed. I've not been on the radio for quite a while now. But as life's gone on, I wanted to come with a different perspective and just share with the community things that I've experienced in the last few years. Obviously, Ramadan is a time we often describe as a month of mercy, reflection and togetherness. A time when families gather to break their fast, when mosques are filled with worshippers, and when communities come alive in the evenings. But tonight we want to talk about a reality that is often unseen and sometimes misunderstood. Because for many families in our communities, Ramadan does not look like the picture we usually imagine. There are parents who are awake through the night, not for tahajjud, but because their child cannot sleep. There are families who cannot attend the mosque because their child struggles with sensory overload. There are mothers and fathers who carry emotional, physical and financial pressures quietly, with immense patience, love and faith. Tonight's programme is about those families. It's about understanding the realities of raising children with special needs. It's about breaking stigma, building compassion and recognising the strength that exists inside homes we may never fully see. This conversation is not just about challenges, it's about resilience, dignity, and the deep mercy that Ramadan teaches us to embody. We'll also be opening the lines to hear from you tonight, your thoughts, experiences, and reflections, because this conversation is not just about services or systems, it's about people, it's about families, and the mercy Ramadan teaches us to show one another. So the reason why I wanted to start my first program with this topic is because my background was in sports and working with young people across the country, in schools and colleges who come from hard-to-reach backgrounds, broken homes, exploitation and the rest. Only recently I was offered the opportunity to work at Ellesmere College, an organisation who works with young people from primary to sixth form who have special needs. This experience has opened my eyes to a whole new world. So joining me today, Simon Coopy, head of the Ayleston Centre at Ellesmere College. Simon, thanks for joining me today. I hope you're well. Firstly, do you want to introduce yourself and what you do?
My name's Simon Coopy, and I am head of centre at Ellesmere College, Ayleston Meadows. So Ellesmere College is a really big special school just based on the outskirts of Leicester. We have two different sites. We've got our Ayleston Meadows site and then a site which is on Herrick Road, just off the Welford Road. And we cater for around 440 children, aged from 5 up to 19, who have a range of learning disability, special educational needs, and various other support, medical needs, or wide variety really that we cater for. I've worked in special education for over 20 years now, in a variety of different roles in a variety of different schools, and it is a privilege to do so. Ellesmere College is a very special place to be. We've got around 300 staff working to support the children across both sites, and it is, as I say, just an absolute privilege to work alongside the children and their families and to make a difference to the community across Leicester.
I mean, obviously, when I've got special needs stepchildren, and I've sort of been in the field back in 2011 at Ashfield Academy, so it's a very long time ago. But when I came to Ellesmere College, I seen the vast variety and the wide spectrum. I didn't know just how big this need is for special needs. So when it comes to Ellesmere College, what are some of the most common needs you see among students?
Well, most of our students have their main presenting need is around their communication and interaction. Now, that difficulty might be caused by an autism diagnosis or some general global delay, other types of learning disability. We've got young people with Down syndrome and various other physically recognisable disabilities as well. But all of that grouped together, the focus that we bring is on their communication and interaction, because the better we can communicate, the more we can give our young people a voice, And the more that they can understand the world that they're growing up in, the biggest difference it's going to make. So we spend an awful lot of our time on giving our young people a voice. And that is almost like our overriding mission at Ellesmere, is to prepare them for the future and make sure they can live as independent and as purposeful and full lives as possible.
And what does a typical day look like for a young person attending Ellesmere College?
Well, I think we, as you just really rightly mentioned, we've got a lot of children with a very wide variety of needs and a wide variety of ages. So, if I try to give you an example, like a child in our primary department, they would come into school, and in some ways it looks like school. They're in a class with some friends, but it's a much smaller class than a mainstream setting. So maybe between 8 and 12 children in the class, and they'll be supported by one teacher and possibly up to 4 teaching assistants. So the levels of staffing are much, much higher than you'd find in a mainstream setting, just purely because that's what the children need to keep them safe, to care for them through the day, and to allow them to access their education.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen personally that it's down to ability rather than their age. So, I mean, thankfully, since I've been at Ellesmere, I've managed to get to primary, to secondary, and then post-16 as well. And again, there's some days where I get sent to a class where, some students or the class is very independent. They can speak as a normal person would. They can get on with majority of things that they need to independently, like going to the toilet, for example. And then next door to that class, there could be, students who are slightly older in age, but they may need way more intensive support. They may need assistance with the toilet. They can't necessarily communicate to the pre-verbal, as they say. And, again, like the variety of ability in the college is, I mean, the work that you do, let me just say again, it's amazing. I didn't know, firstly, that Ellesmere College catered for this. I just thought it's a normal sixth form college. And then coming and seeing different people with different needs, but again, the different personalities and identities that they've all got as well. I mean, I can give you, not mentioning any names because obviously data protection, but I can give you so many different sort of students that I've had personal interactions with. And honestly, I've loved every minute of it. I'll give you an example, and you may know who I'm talking about. There's a young girl who's got Down syndrome in Georgia's class. I think you know who I'm on about. Yep. Honestly, that girl, she's absolute character. I remember when I was in their class, and we were playing basketball for PE, and she just kept pushing me because I couldn't get the ball in the net, and she just kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And yes, her communication isn't the greatest when it comes to understanding her. But if you slow things down, you don't rush them, and you try to actually hear what they're saying, the things that come out of their mouths, or the way they try to communicate is actually amazing. It's very different to your typical person who may not have special needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you've done there is you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, is that Ellesmere is about the individual, and it's about a personalised approach to their learning. So one of the great joys of working in special education is that interaction with the young people. It's what gets me into school every day. Just absolutely love spending time with those children and seeing them learn and develop. Because once, and you'll have seen this having been in school, once you sort of see beyond the disability, they're just children. They're just young people who are learning like anybody else. And they have a personality like anybody else. They get grumpy like we do. They get tired like we do, but they share joy like we do. And that's one of the things that, again, I think we pride ourselves on at Ellesmere, that it is a place where quality learning takes place, but it is full of joy. It is full of happiness, and it is full of celebrating these young people for who they are, regardless of their abilities, regardless of what diagnosis they might have. And actually, that is the true pleasure of the place, is that we know every child individually, and we know how they are trying to communicate, and we know what their next steps are, and to make a real difference to their life and to their future, and to their families as well.
And yeah, for the listeners, if you want to text in on WhatsApp or normal text, the studio line is 077 488 55055. So that's 077 488 55055. Now, Simon, just to get a little bit more intense into the program today, what do you wish the public better understood about young people with special needs?
That is a really good question. I think just to sort of throw in, I think there's been a massive step forward in society, particularly over the last 15, 20 years, in our understanding of people with additional needs. And some of it in this country was driven by the London 2012 Olympics and Paralympic Games, which really put Paralympics onto the front foot and into the headlines, and made people more aware of the disabled community, and of their needs, really. So I'm very grateful for that and those steps forward that have been made, but there is a long way to go as well. So I think what I would say is that for a lot of our young people, just being out and about can be quite a challenge for them and their families. So we might take for granted that, Saturday morning we're going to nip into Leicester, we're going to pick up a few bits that we need. I've got my own children, I need to get them a new pair of shoes, or whatever it might be. But for some of our families, the reality of life is very, very different. And you said really articulately in your introduction about the pressures that sits with those families. And I think as a wider society, we need to be aware that those families are in our community, they are part of our community, and they need our support. So practical things that you can do is, if you see a child who is struggling to regulate, who is struggling to, it might just look like a tantrum to you. It may well not be. So please don't judge. Don't judge that family. They might be having a really hard time of it. It might be as much as they can do to get that child out of the house that day. So I would say that as one key message. And the second key message is just going back to what I was saying before, is that the disabled community are like any other kind of minority community in this country. They are made up of people with feelings and their hopes and dreams, just like the rest of us. So, if we could hold on to that as a society and just put everyone on an even footing, and celebrate our individuals, celebrate the things that they can do, and celebrate the people that they are, I think that would be great.
And that leads me on to my next question. But before that, you talked about the London Olympics in 2012. It's quite funny you say that, because one of the classes I was working with, I don't know if you've seen much of me in the college, but I mean, when I'm around there, there'll always be about 20, 30 kids every single time I'm in there. Come on, you're that guy, play football, let's play football. Honestly, they make me run around wild. I don't know how to keep up with it, especially with a twisted ankle. But I've seen that the females get involved in football as well. I remember there was two specific girls in the, was it the TMB building?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, from the TMB building. There's two specific girls, and they were playing football with us. And obviously after break time, I sat them inside and I said, have you ever considered actually doing something in sports or athletics? Because I think you've got it in you. You just probably haven't got the confidence, or you don't feel like you're, able to be a part of that. But I mean, I've seen the talent there, I've seen the potential there, and honestly, whether disabled or not, there's so much potential in that college, whether it's sports, whether it's anything. And again, once you really just take a step back and look at these people individually, like you said, there's so much to be seen.
There is, absolutely. And, sport and physical well-being is vital for our young people. So I'm really pleased to hear that you've been involved in the football. I occasionally get dragged in as well, but being the age that I am, I'm very much slower. It's sport and exercise forms a vital part of our curriculum. And also, just going back to what we were saying before about what we want society to look like, and society to understand about the needs of the young people at Ellesmere, is opportunities outside of school. So, there are some brilliant clubs and organisations which cater for the needs of our students, football clubs, and, community clubs, social clubs, opportunities for doing things with friends outside of school. All of those things are absolutely wonderful, but I think we need more of them. So, if you're listening tonight and you run a community group, or you run something for young people, just have a think about how you might like to get young people with additional needs involved, because they would absolutely relish being part of your club or organisation, I'm absolutely sure. So, and again, happy to sort of flag Ellesmere College and myself, always happy to advise and support if you wanted to get in touch about something like that, because we really, really believe in what we do and creating opportunities for our young people.
And just off the bat of that, I wasn't even gonna ask you, but I thought it's quite imperative that we, get the mosques and other institutions involved. For people with special needs, how can the mosques and other places of worship, whether it's church or synagogues, whatever, how can they help with people with special needs in terms of learning about religion or faith, and even just inclusion in general?
Well, I think, I sort of speak, from a Christian background myself, and my understanding of the vast majority of the world's religions is about loving people and about grace and mercy for others. So if we are treating people with that love and that care, that's a great starting point, and that's one of the things I really like about the commonality amongst all of the major world faiths, is that focus on love and care for everybody, and not least for those who find life difficult. But in terms of sort of practical things, obviously, modern building regulations in terms of physical access, it's about making sure that we're really tight on following those things. So, people with physical impairments or difficulties can access spaces. Wheelchair users. Again, so we're thinking about how you can make those buildings accessible. But I think we're becoming increasingly aware of neurodiversity, and people with an autism diagnosis, and various other neurodiverse conditions. We need to cater for those people as well. So it's thinking about how you might structure your spaces. So for some of our young people, I know that if they come from a Muslim family and they want to go to the mosque, it can be incredibly difficult. And I'm sure some mosques do this, and I can't speak from personal experience, but it's about maybe having some breakout spaces, some quiet spaces, with like kind of low stimulation, low number of people there, so people can withdraw or take their child to that sort of area, but they're still in the building, they're still part of the community, they're still loved and valued. So I think that's one very practical thing that we can do. And in terms of understanding of religion, I think we can get hooked up on the sort of the intricacies and the depth of texts and things in our religion, but we hold on to that ultimate basis of we love and care for our community, we love and care for God's people, then I don't think we're going to go too far wrong if that's the basis.
Yeah, no, 100%, Simon. And you hit the nail on the head with that. I mean, more than anything, characteristics. I know I can speak about Islam only, but characteristic, the love you show, in Christianity as well, love thy neighbor, etc. Those are the first things that we should be teaching people more than anything. Now, moving on to the next bit. What are some of the biggest challenges students face beyond the classroom, and how important is routine and structure in their daily life?
Well, I'll take the routine and structure to start off with, and very important. I think all of us like a bit of routine and structure. If you think about your own day, there's certain routines that you'll follow when you get up. Your meal times are a fixed time. You'll do certain things at certain times of day. My youngest child is only 18 months old, and he very much needs that structure. He hasn't got any additional needs, but he needs routine and structure. So we all do to some extent, and we all like things to be predictable. I was on a training course recently, and at lunchtime, the person running the course went round to a few people and said, "When you go back in after lunch, can you just sit in somebody else's seat?" And so we all did this, and it really, really, really upset people, because people like that routine. They were thinking, "That's my seat. That's where I'm at for the day." So if we feel that as neurotypical people, if you've got neurodiversity, those small changes can make a big impact on your day. So routine and structure is really important. And things we do at school to support that is that every class has a visual timetable. So when they come in, they can see it's registration, then it's English, then it's break time, then it might be time in the sensory room, um, and lunch, or however that day might pan out. So lots and lots of support for them to understand that structure and routine. Um, Change has to be managed very, very carefully. So if we know we've got a special event on or something like that in school, we don't stop doing those things, because our young people need to be able to cope with change. It's how we manage it for them. So it's about putting in those small steps or advance notice, saying, actually, well, today we've got something different and this is what it is. So yeah, routine and structure are very, very important. And I'm sure if you talk to a lot of families, they would say the same. I know that some of our children go home and they have to do the same things. So they have to take their shoes off and their coat off and hang it on a particular peg. And then they'll watch a certain TV program and then it's tea time. And that's the same for them every day. And if they don't have that, then they can really, really struggle. So routine and structure is really, really important. And in terms of the challenges that they might face outside of the classroom, I think some of it is around a world which is not geared up for people with neurodiversity in many ways, because some of those support systems are just not readily available. So, and going back to what we were saying about maybe mosques, places of worship, community centres, places where people gather, football stadiums, anything like that. The better your visuals are at sort of spelling out what happens in that place and the order that things happen, I think that would be really, really supportive for the disabled community and for people with neurodiversity. I think that's absolutely vital. So the world at the moment, I don't think is fully geared up for that. I think it's improving, but I think it's something that we could maybe all, as a society, focus on a little bit more, because we're becoming increasingly aware of people with neurodiversity and what that condition means. So we need to make a society that matches that and meets those needs and makes it inclusive for people. I think other challenges that people face. I was listening to the radio the other day, and I'm sure people listening will have heard that there was a leak at the weekend about the restructure of what's called the Educational Healthcare Plan for young people with additional needs, and revising how that's structured. The stress of that system has historically been horrific for families. Really, really difficult. They have really struggled to get through the process to get the child the support that they need. Now, if you've got a child with disabilities, you need a world which cares and a world which makes that support easy to come by, not more difficult. So I'm hoping with some of these reforms that come in, and there's been a mixed response, but we don't have all the details yet, that actually that will make a real difference. And we can assess needs more quickly and get support in place better, so families are not having to fight. When they're already facing many challenges, having to fight to get the support you need is not something that they should have to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going back on communication. One of the things that I found most interesting, I've got a 2-year-old son, and sort of during I'd say his first year, he was watching a lot of Miss Rachel, and I was obviously seeing that she does a lot of Makaton, and I was picking up from him some of the things that he was picking up. So, for example, if he was to say more, he'll do things like this. Now, I know obviously people interpret Makaton slightly differently sometimes, but one thing I've seen at Ellesmere College was that Makaton is a very important part of your structure. The last few years, I've obviously looked back at, myself, I didn't really do too well in education when I was younger. And I always look back at what subjects, or where can I advise young people to take on parts of each subject. For example, like geography, it might seem boring, but try to learn about it. One of the biggest things that I try to now push is language, because you never know where you're going to be sat in a different country, and if you don't know how to communicate with someone that doesn't speak your native language, how will you then get past that barrier? Now, Makaton, for example, for me, I've tried to slightly learn it, and I think for me personally, one of the goals that I have in life now is to try and teach my son certain languages. Makaton is one of them, or sign language. And again, it's, some kids, they virtually cannot speak at all at this moment, and that Makaton does really help them to communicate. And I think, going back to that thing we were talking about, how communities can help, is by trying to learn basic sign language or basic Makaton, where you can communicate with a person. If they can't get their words out, I think that would really help people in communities and people with special needs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, I think, again, it has become more high profile over the last sort of 20 years. And I think, if you're a CBeebies watcher, Mr. Tumble has got, we probably owe him a debt of thanks, I think, for raising the profile of signing. But yeah, it's a vital tool at Ellesmere. We train all of our staff in Makaton, and we try and really consistently use it with the children. And it does unlock the world for them. That Makaton, or something else that we use, is an exchange of pictures. So a child might have a symbol of a drink. Now, they might be a pre-verbal child who has no speech, but they can take that symbol and hand it to their teacher, and then we'll understand that they're asking for a drink. So, signing, absolutely vital. There's great resources online that you can have a look at, just to learn some basics. Even if it's just a few simple things like being able to say hello, goodbye, please, thank you, offer somebody a drink or something to eat. It could really make them feel welcome. Potentially, if that's something that people try to do.
Yeah, we've just had a text in from someone. Sorry, studio, can you just slightly raise that a little bit so I can read the bottom? Perfect, thank you. So someone just texted saying, I understand that in the past people have explained things spiritually because they didn't have medical knowledge, but now we know these conditions are developmental differences in the brain. Writing it off spiritually can stop a child from getting the support they actually need. Mosques may need to run workshops and educate our society, especially the elder community. This would prevent parents, from feeling isolated and sometimes even judged. I 100% agree. I think growing up as well, a lot of these things we did not know. In the 90s, the early 2000s, we really didn't understand it. And unfortunately, and this is me being very honest, unfortunately, a lot of people would pass it off as this person is mental. I've seen it in so many ways, and like I said, why Ellesmere College opened my eyes so much was because of the difference in special needs and disabilities. So Simon, what's your views on that?
I couldn't agree more, really, in terms of that, that sort of spiritual element and that understanding of the world. I suppose that we are developing our understanding of additional needs more and more, with each sort of passing year. And we're getting a greater understanding of them, and also a greater understanding of what might cause them. So whether it's kind of something that's developed with a genetic condition, or sometimes people are deprived of oxygen at birth, and that can cause damage to the brain, or a whole raft of things which can cause those additional needs. And it's absolutely right, and again, I've seen it within Christianity as well. That it's been written off as a spiritual defect, if you like, or something that God has done to because of, I don't know, whatever, sins in the past life, or anything like that. And that's just not right, And like I was saying before, we must celebrate everybody as an individual, regardless of their abilities or disabilities or their levels of understanding. We're all born into this world, and we share it, and we must cherish each other, really. So, any feelings. I'm so pleased that hopefully we're kind of moving away from that idea that we just write this off as something spirit, whereas it actually isn't.
No, 100%, Sam. I definitely agree with that. And for the listeners, again, that was a beautiful text, so thank you very much for that. For the listeners, the text line is 077 488 55055. That's 077 488 855 Please get your texts in. We'd love to hear from you if you've got any questions or views as well. Anything you want to ask myself or Simon, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Simon, now from the sort of faith angle, from your experience, what unique challenges do you think Muslim families with special needs children face during Ramadan?
Well, one is, and we've already touched on it, I think, is that change in routine. Particularly if you are fasting and you are only allowed to eat at particular times of the day, that can become quite a challenge to shape your family's routine around that. Particularly, and we have a real mixture at Ellesmere. We have a lot of students from Muslim families, and some will fast and some will opt not to. A lot of our younger children, I know, don't partake in the fasting. So it's about maintaining that child's routine, whilst your family routine might be completely changed for those few weeks. So different routines, different rituals, different times of eating. You said in your introduction, quite rightly, a lot of children with neurodiversity or learning disabilities, night times are difficult. So actually, if you've got parents or older siblings who are being disturbed in the night anyway on a routine basis, and then having to change their eating times and wait late or up early to eat, that can be quite a challenge as well, I would imagine. So yeah, hats off to you if you're managing to do that, really. So yeah, and obviously it's a period of change and a period of reflection, and I think actually we've just entered the Christian festival of Lent, a very similar time actually to Ramadan starting, and it's a time for quiet reflection and prayer and all of those things. And if you are in a household where you have a child whose needs are so high priority and their ability to regulate and be calm is difficult, actually finding that time for yourself as a parent to just reflect on your faith and reflect on the season of Ramadan, I imagine that would be a real challenge as well. So, and one thing I often say to parents at school, not in the context of Ramadan necessarily, but you must find some time to be you. That is so important, because if you become so subsumed in the care for this child that you lose yourself, then that's not helpful to anybody really. Now, that might sound glib if you're a single parent on your own. I know that must be very, 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 very difficult. But just snatch those moments and just be you where you can.
No, definitely. And that kind of leads me on to my next bit. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a parent of 3, but 2 of her children have special needs. So her younger daughter, yeah, it was a younger daughter, yeah. So she was saying, as a neurodivergent parent, and then having a child with special needs as well, she was, obviously you have these sensory issues where, the child loves to be, the child loves affection, so she loves to be held and cuddled and everything, and whereas the mother doesn't like that too much. So you're now living in 2 different, complete, separate worlds of one loves affection, one just likes to be left alone. And she was, sometimes I don't know how to deal with that, because, my child needs that affection, and I'm there like, I don't want to be touched, I just want to be left alone. That also is a major challenge for the child and the parent. So just what you were saying there, where, trying to get that moment to be you. How difficult do you think that might be for someone who's dealing with it themselves and then also having to deal with it when their child has it?
I think incredibly difficult, and my heart goes out to people in that sort of situation. And again, parenting, just if you're raising children without any additional needs, parenting, I think is the ultimate lesson in not being selfish yourself, because you have to give so much of your time and your energy to your children. But then if you've got children who are craving even more, then that's very difficult as well. So, I mean, the example that you've given, I would really hope that they had a wider support network around them, so that that parent gets a break, and also that the child can get what they need as well. And again, maybe that's where community is so important. Is that we need to identify and recognize the needs that these people are facing, and step up to support them, really. So whether that's mosques, churches, synagogues, whatever, having options for children to go and have some time away from their parents, and their parents get some time. There's no easy answer to that, and I say what I say to parents about finding times to be you, but equally I see parents coming into school who are just exhausted, who are not sleeping, who find life a real challenge. And as a school, we really value our role in supporting with that. So one of the things we've not really touched upon so much, I suppose, is the role that school can play in supporting at home. So using some of the same communication, the Macathon, the visual timetables, the idea of a now and next board, which is what you're doing at the moment and what you're going to be doing in a minute. If we can get some commonality with families as well, hopefully that might go some way towards supporting routine at home and making children be able to kind of manage their day a bit better, really. And hopefully that will also help with parenting. I know we have one family who literally, it has been a game changer having a now and next board at home saying now bath, then bed. So the child knows what's coming and they know it's going to be bedtime soon. And that has genuinely revolutionized the evening in that household. So, things like that, and the role that school can play. And it's so important that we are linked with the parents. So again, if you're listening and you have a child with additional needs, whether they're in a mainstream setting or a special school setting, don't be afraid to approach the school and tell them what's going on at home. Because my experience of schools they are places that we will listen without judgment, and we just want to help. So please do get in touch with your school if that's the situation that you find yourself in.
Brilliant. And the last couple of questions before we finish the show, Simon. What moments in your work have really stayed with you emotionally, and what gives you hope when working in this field? And before you answer that, obviously you were meant to initially come into studio today and share this program with me, but unfortunately you couldn't because you live in a whole different city. So you have to come into work every day. And I mean, I used to work in that city myself every day, up on M69, M6 or whatever. It's not a nice journey. Obviously for me, it's always been a case of the moment I get into that building, whichever school I work at, I'm at joy knowing that today we're about to make a difference, we're about to have impact on someone's life. So again, what moments in your work have really stayed with you emotionally, and what gives you hope when working in this field?
I think if I sort of take myself, if you don't mind, I'll take myself right back to when I was growing up, because my dad actually was a special school head as well, and it's kind of in the genes, I suppose. But I also grew up with a brother who has cerebral palsy, so he has some physical and some learning disability. So I grew up being aware of what life was like for a family with a person with a significant level of additional need. And I think that's what led me into the work that I do, because hopefully I can bring some empathy and genuine understanding of what life is like for people with additional needs. Now, I feel that, going on to what you said about the moments that have really stuck with me, whilst working in special education has its challenges, whilst our young people and their families face real challenges, the moments that stick with me are the moments of pure joy and pure achievement. So it's things like each half term, we end the half term with a celebration assembly where children will receive awards and recognition of the things that they've done. And the sheer enthusiasm and happiness of those occasions lifts me every time that we do them, because the children are so proud of what they've done, and they're so proud of their friends as well. And it's just wonderful to see them, achieving and celebrating. Other really noticeable things. I mean, I've been so lucky in my career. I've done some wonderful things. So, well, we already mentioned London 2012. We took a group of young people from Ellesmere to the opening ceremony of the London 2012 Games, in recognition of our work we were doing in sport and health at the time, which was just absolutely fantastic. And to see them included as part of that national event, really, an occasion, was just incredible. So, big highlight moments like that, but also there's just joy in the interactions that you have with the children every day. Like you've mentioned yourself, I come home and I say to my family each night, there's some story, something that's happens, or some moment of happiness within school that must be shared. And as I say, we've spoken a lot tonight about the challenges that people face, but don't forget those joyful moments as well. And I suppose in terms of joyful moments, the other sort of string to my bow is that I, with a couple of friends, about nearly 15 years ago now, we set up an inclusive dance company based at Curve Theatre in Leicester, and we run an annual showcase for the special schools. So each school in the city and county will bring a group to perform at Curve on the main stage, with a different theme each year, and the sense of achievement that those young people get from being on the stage, and the sense of pride that their families have in them, seeing them perform, is just amazing. And every year it's an incredible amount of work, and every year I say, I can't do this again, it's too much. But every year I do it because it is just such a wonderful occasion, and to see such achievement, and parents looking at their child thinking, I never thought my child would perform on the main stage at Curve, but here they are, and they deserve that platform and they deserve that recognition. So yeah, that for me is an annual highlight.
Do you know what? I don't think I could have said it any better, Simon. I mean, even with myself, with whatever background I've ever worked in, it comes to the end of the year, and I think what people maybe in this field don't realize, that ain't in this field don't realize, is that we're not looking for perfection, we're looking for progress. And by the end of term, by the end of the year, as long as we've seen some kind of progress, where it might be a child who was not interested in education at all, who was going through the maddest things in their life, where they might be special needs, whatever it is, and then they just come and, just within 6 weeks to, a whole year, whatever it is, they come and they're like, I achieved this, or they've changed their attitude towards things. And again, like you said, sometimes you feel like, I can't do this anymore. And you think, no, something's dragging me back. And it's funny because like you're talking about moments in your career. I mean, since I've been at Ellesmere, I think I've only been there about a month and a half, I think, and I've probably interacted with at least about 200 students. I got myself familiar with a lot of the staff in school as well. And it's funny because I was in Angie's class a couple of weeks ago. It was so funny because I've got two young kids. I'm getting dragged from one side with one kid, and the other guy's dragging me to the other side. I'm actually getting torn apart because they both wanted to sit next to me. And honestly, when I say, yes, you do have the challenges, but the joy that these kids bring to you, and the stories that you kind of come home to and speak to your family about every single day, oh, this child did or said this today, and that child did and said this today. Words can't even explain or justify just the satisfaction you get from working with young people and with young people with special needs. But we're just literally at the end of the show now. So Simon Coopy, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming on today's show. I'll be seeing you in a few days, I believe.
You will.
I'll be back at Ellesmere, yeah. So thank you for having me. And again, it was only by luck that I actually came to Ellesmere because of my current circumstances with parenting. I actually came into Ellesmere last minute on one of the Fridays when my son never went into nursery, so I wasn't even meant to be working that day. I got the text from the agency and I said I want to come in, and I didn't even know that I was going to come into a special needs school. But honestly, the experience that I've had so far, and hopefully many more years to come, I'm enjoying my time there. I think the work that you're doing is phenomenal. There's no words to say just how great. And the organizational structure. I've worked in many organizations, and I see the structure that you have, especially the fact that you're catering to over almost 500 students in one building is phenomenal. So again, thank you for your work, and thank you for Ellesmere College, and everyone else, thank you for listening. Now, from the professional perspective we've heard today, I was going to say we're going to get some text in, but I think we're out of time. So to close off, as we close tonight's program, perhaps the most important thing to remember is not every struggle is visible. There are families in our communities who live with our challenges that most of us will never ever see or fully understand. Parents who carry constant worry, young people who are trying to navigate a world that is not always designed for them, and carers and staff who quietly give their time, energy and hearts every single day. Ramadan teaches us to increase our mercy, not only through charity, but through how we see one another, through patience, through understanding, through choosing compassion over judgment, because sometimes the greatest support we can give someone is simply to understand their reality. Tonight is a reminder that special needs families are not asking for sympathy, they are asking for awareness, inclusion and dignity. May Allah ease the burdens of every family facing these tests, reward their patience and allow us to become a community that truly looks after